Hey guys, welcome back to the conclusion of Mock Draft Week. That's right, we are finishing up with our summer mock series. Hey, what is it?
Mock, yeah!
Yeah, that's right. All right, it's the Mock Draft series. We are going to finish up with a 10-team standard draft. That way, any of you in the shorter leagues are able to have some sort of information to go on. I've already got it queued up and ready to go here. Let's check out where we are drafting. We are drafting in the, looks like 7th slot here, guys. So that's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit more value coming around the turn on that. But we're looking at 1 QB, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, 1 defense, 1 kicker. I thought about doing a super flex in this, but I think just a 10 team, let's just stick with a regular standard scoring, see what we get there. It's a little bit different with the super flex because you've got more options there at the QB for you. So you can actually hold off a little longer on your QB as far as if you're picking in the back of the first round in that instance. But we're talking about a standard league. Let's get going here. 60 seconds on the clock and get our first pick in. Obviously, we're going to see what falls down the board to us. Standard scoring, we're going to be leaning towards running back heavily, at least early. I do not mind seeing Nick Chubb fall down the board to me. I think that he and Ezekiel Elliott, out of what remains as far as running backs, are probably the best options at this point in the round, just because they're not competing as heavily for. Well, at least Ezekiel Elliott is competing for touches. Nick Chubb is to some extent, but he's proven that he can handle that no matter what. That competition with Antonio Gibson. I was just looking at him with Kareem Hunt. So we're going to go with Chubb here and be absolutely happy in the 7th position to get him. It's a guy who has the upside of being a top 3 running back at the end of the year. All right, so we've got some more running backs available to us here. They're pushing, looks like Cam Akers and Joe Mixon. I would consider Gibson here as well. I think Najee Harris is a good option too. Not super excited about him just because I don't really know what the story is going to be with that offensive line. It was a bit touch and go last year. I think that was the majority of the problem for them. But I think I'm going to check in with Cam Akers and see what's what. I think that's the guy we're going to go with. I'm not a huge Joe Mixon truther, guys. If you don't know me, then you don't know that. But if you do know me, you know that a lot about me. I've never been a big fan. We're going to go with Cam Akers in the 2nd round, and I think we're going to look at the wide receiver position here and see what's come around on the turn. McLaurin's right there at the top of the list, followed by Mike Thomas, Mike Evans, Allen Robinson. The proof, Keenan Allen. I think that we can try and hope that we can grab 2 really solid wide receivers here. I think running back has already gotten kind of thin. I do like Dobbins and Montgomery. I think Montgomery is going to slide down the board a little bit. I really like Dobbins and Hilaire there. But we're going to go with wide receiver. And I like between Thomas and McLaurin is where I'm sitting. I do like Mike Evans. There's a lot of competition there. Allen Robinson is just always solid, but I think I'm going to hope to see him come back around on the turn. It's doubtful, but I'm going to hope that he does. So let's just go with I like McLaurin better. I think that I could trust him. Well, you know what? Let's go with Michael Thomas. I think I trust that QB situation a little bit better, which is scary saying that I trust to have an option of Jameis Winston thrown to my guy, right? Okay, so Dobbins did fall off the board, and so did Hilaire, which means that Montgomery is still available. DeAndre Swift went off the board. That's a little surprising already. But what I do like to see is both Allen Robinson and I think Allen Robinson and David Montgomery are both still available. It's a question of who I prefer here. And honestly, I've only got the 1 wide receiver, and I'd like to get at least a 2nd wide receiver 1 that I feel comfortable with here. I've got 2 really good running backs. I'd be looking at a flex if I were taking somebody here. David Montgomery would be a great flex, but the dude was just phenomenal in the second half last year. Until I think like the playoffs, like the last 2 weeks of the playoffs, he wasn't that great if I recall. I didn't have him on any of my teams that were that deep. So I can't really say, but I do know that he was a top 10 back second half. But I'm gonna go with actually I prefer Allen Robinson over Terry McLaurin and Mike Evans here. Just the consistency out of him. You know what you're getting every day on that. All right, Montgomery on off the board finally. You had to imagine it was going to happen. I think it was 15, 14 picks roughly between our last picks. Robert Woods, Bobby Trees still hanging around. I like to see that value late in the fifth round here. That's great. Kareem Hunt, we could consider stacking with Nick Chubb. I'm not really a fan of doing that sort of stuff. Whether or not both of those guys are going to be solid, that's another thing entirely. But with Nick Chubb already on our team, we're kind of passing on Kareem Hunt. He could be a good guy to grab, though. Mike Davis, he's a number one running back on that team. I don't know of anybody else who's going to be going after him there. I'm surprised James Robinson's all the way down the board on Fantasy Pros rankings. I like him a lot better than that. I think Justin doesn't like him as much as I do. We're looking at wide receiver here. We got Bobby Trees. We got Kenny Golladay, DJ Moore. I think it's entirely possible that DJ Moore will have a really, really good year hanging out with Darnold, but I think Darnold's a project a bit, whereas I know that Matt Stafford is not, so we are going to grab Robert Woods. Bobby Trees, I love it. I think that he's a high-volume guy and an offense that's probably going to throw a decent amount this year, and I think you can rely on that. Let's look back at running back and see where we are. Still got Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis. Robinson did go off the board, it looks like. Yeah, he did. So they must have heard me talking about him, I guess. I don't know. But let's see here what we've got at wide receiver. Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett. Ayuk is not bad. T. Higgins is hanging out there. Deontay Johnson is as well. Running back, what round are we in? We're in the sixth round. Running back isn't too terribly picked over. We've still got Mike Davis. We've still got Damian Harris, Javonte Williams. Ronald Jones is down there. That's not terrible. It's not the greatest thing I've ever seen either. A.J. Dillon's hiding out. If we look at our roster, we are balanced right now, but I'd lean towards running back, I think. And I'm going to go with Mike Davis. He's a running back one. At least we know that much about him. I don't think that offense is going to do a heck of a lot of running, but I think that Mike Davis is when he stepped in for McCaffrey last year, he carried the load pretty solidly. All right, seventh round. I want to check out what the status is on tight end as far as has it gotten too thin on us? Do we feel comfortable still hanging on it, waiting on it? I think we do feel comfortable waiting on it, maybe. QB, I do feel comfortable sitting tight for a little bit. I think we've got a couple options down the board here that are pretty good. Justin Herbert's hanging out there. Aaron Rodgers is still there. If he's in Green Bay, which I think he's going to end up there, as you can see, I pay attention, obviously, to them. There's no reason not for him not to do well again this year. Another guy I like is Matthew Stafford down there. He's hiding out. Joe Burrow's hiding out. Matt Ryan, Mr. Volume for you. Running back is kind of thin, but we could go for our fourth. I think what we do is we go for our wide receiver here, and maybe it's a bit of a reach, but we can get somebody like Claypool here, and that's not a terrible move. I think Claypool's a solid guy. He's going to be a good bench guy for us. Could step in and surprise, and I think that's what we want, right? All right, let's check out tight end, see if anything came off the board. It looks like it wasn't terrible. Dallas Goedert's still hanging out there. A lot of people are really high on Goedert. He's coming off an injury. I like Goedert, but I'm not entirely sure about that there. I think if I'm going to take anybody here, it's probably Tunyon, and consider stacking him. Let's with a QB and go and grab Stafford at that time. Let's see what other options I've got if I do that. I mean, if I do that, I've also got Cam Akers hanging out there, so that might be a sweet stack to grab here. Obviously, it's not a best ball league or anything like that. We're not looking at DFS or anything. But if I'm out there grabbing Stafford and I've got Robert Woods hanging out there as well, apparently I'm going heavy on the Rams here, guys. I think that we look at running back or wide receiver here, maybe tight end. God, we're running out of time here, so I'm going to go and grab a backup running back in Damian Harris just because we know he's going to potentially be a volume guy for us, and that's pretty solid. That's what we want right there in a bench guy, somebody who could potentially blow up for us and step into our lineup on a regular basis. Wide receiver, we've got a few pretty good ones still hanging out here. Robbie Anderson, I'm kind of surprised to see still hanging out here in the back of the ninth round. Tight end just isn't moving, is it? But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and grab my guy, and that's going to be Robert Tunyon, Bobby T, right? The reason I want to grab Tunyon here is just because I want to ensure I get that guy. Because I don't want to get in a situation where I'm kind of leaning towards stacking a tight end. I don't want to have too many stacked players. If I'm looking at aiming, if I'm aiming at Stafford right now, that's something I want to avoid. But there's a consolation prize here potentially that maybe Rodgers is sitting there in the next round and I can grab him. And there he is. He is stacking, or he is sitting there. I can potentially stack two different ways here now. I've got really solid pickups here, really solid options. I've got Stafford as well as Rodgers. Both of them are going to be decent volume. I imagine Stafford will have a slightly higher volume, but Rodgers' efficiency will be greater. If we're looking at the roster right now, with Rodgers, we're stacking with a tight end. I like that kind of stack. I think that's pretty good, just because you're getting a consistency out of both of them. I do like the QB stack with the running back and a wide receiver, especially with Robert Woods here. If we're looking at a PPR league, if it was a half PPR, full PPR, then yeah, I would really consider that. I think that would just be phenomenal because you're getting all kinds of double down on that stuff. But I think where we're going to go is it's thin at running back. There's some decent guys here at wide receiver still, but let's go ahead and grab Rodgers. That's who they're suggesting anyway, saying he's not got a very good schedule, but when have we ever cared about Rodgers' schedule, right? All right. We are off of the QB. We are off of the tight end. We are set in both of those arenas, and we're looking at 4 more bench spots. We've got 4 running backs and 4 wide receivers. All right. Let's try to get to 6 and 6 and see if we can get there. Running back right now, I think, is probably where I'm headed. I like Latavius Murray. He's probably the guy I would take here if I'm going running back. Tariq Cohen's not a bad option, but not over Latavius Murray. And I think that I have to lean towards the running back at this spot here. I'm not a big fan of a bunch of these guys. And so, yeah, I'm going to go with Latavius Murray. I like Mike Williams. I do like him a lot. He's competing with Keenan Allen. I think it's a little early to try to take him. I think you can get him a little bit later, unless you got somebody in your league is just all up on Mike Williams, right? All right, so we've got a running back there. Let's check out the wide receivers. Jamal Williams is officially, at this point, second running back in their camp, so he is somebody that you could take, and he's always good for sniping about 30% of the carries or touches in a game from the other running backs. So that wouldn't be terrible. And I like to handcuff other people's running backs, not my own. And look at this. Mike Williams is still hanging around. It's the 12th round. That would be a pretty darn good value. Michael Pittman Jr. isn't a terrible pickup here either, but I think I'm going to actually go with Mike Williams. Get a little bit of that Justin Herbert action. Maybe he's the guy who gets 24 targets a game this year over Keenan Allen instead, right? All right, there we go. We'll go ahead and grab him. All right, we're down to 2 bench spots if I'm counting correctly here. Let's double check here. Yeah, we got 2 bench spots. Just for S&G, let's go ahead and check out tight end, see what fell down the board so we can have an idea of what we maybe missed out on by picking a little bit earlier. We got Blake Jarwin as an option. I like him down there. He's coming off an injury, so you're going to have to watch that one. Just kind of pay attention to what's happening in camp there. Got a lot of guys who have been hyped over the years. Irv Smith Jr. is just another guy who's never lived up to what you hope he would get there. Logan Thomas, not a bad option as well. But that's not where I'm headed. I think that we're going to go with the wide receiver here, thinking that this is probably my last wide receiver. I don't know who my last running back would be at this point, so I might end up with 2 wide receivers. I don't see any running backs that I would lean towards at this point over a wide receiver. I've got Michael Pittman Jr. I think Darnell Mooney is a guy that we should consider if we didn't already have the proof, right? Allen Robinson. Henry Ruggs is another guy I like here too, but I'm going to go with Pittman. He's got a pretty solid schedule. I like that a whole lot. And, let's see what happens with him and Goff. Couldn't be terrible, I don't think. It's not going to be the best thing in the world, but it's a decent pick. Let's go to running back here and see what fell. Alexander Madison's hanging out there, And remember, this is our last bench spot. So what we're really considering here and what we should be thinking about is guys who, if we can't get something that we can rely on or know is going to be solid, then we might as well just go get something that's a flyer, right? We might as well go and pick up a guy who has the potential to put in a huge return, maybe if somebody gets injured or if, the game plan just kind of changes. And you can't deny that Minnesota's offense runs through its running back. In the passing game and the running game, it goes through the running back almost entirely. And if Dalvin Cook goes down at any point, which he's good for about 3 misses a year, Alexander Mattison steps right in as an RB1, and I think he could perform in any given week as an RB1 or an RB2. So he's a guy that you have a full option to actually start if you're in a pickle or if you need it or if he's just running up the score, right? All right, let's jump over to defense and see what we can grab. It's kind of thin here, but Tampa Bay is not a bad option. New Orleans, I think they came on towards the back of last year, if I recall correctly. Chiefs are a pretty good one, but I actually like Tampa Bay. They've returned their entire defense, and they've got a pretty solid schedule coming their way. So that's a pretty good opportunity. I think that it's one of those set it and forget it kind of situations. And then kickers, if you watched our last draft, or my last draft actually, I talked about how our power rankings are kind of a cheat code for kickers and defenses right now. And one of the things that you see is that Jason Sanders and Rodrigo Blankenship were just solid last year, under the radar guys. And that's what you're looking for. So you're looking for a guy who's going to have a good schedule, a guy who's going to start off easy, a guy who's going to be on a team that's going to fail to punch it in often. And I think that both of those teams are going to struggle inside the 20. And as a result, you're going to get a lot more kicks, a lot more field goals, a lot more opportunities. And so if you're in a league that still plays kickers, I think those are two guys that you could sit on and grab a defense ahead of. And that way you're able to grab a pretty good kicker. So I'm leaning towards Sanders here. I think that's who's the better value in the end. I think he was number 1 or number 2 in our power rankings last year. And it's just because he put in so many top performances for you. He was very consistent. All right, guys, let's see what our grade was. Oh, they only gave us a B. I'm not entirely sure why that would be, but that's fine. Look, we've got our team. I think we got a lot of solid players. You have to remember this is a 10-team league, and in a 10-team league, you're going to see a lot more depth on each roster. So you should have bench players who are phenomenal, guys who you would think about starting. And I think in a 10-team league, it's a lot harder to figure out who you're starting week in, week out. All right, so running down our roster for those of you who are only listening on the podcast, we've got Aaron Rodgers, Nick Chubb, Cam Akers, and we also have Mike Davis in at flex there as a running back. And then we have Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson the second, the proof, Robert Woods, Bobby Trees. Tight end, we got Robert Tunyon. And we also have defense, we've got Tampa Bay, and we've got Jason Sanders as our kicker. And then on the bench, we managed to grab 3 wide receivers and 3 running backs, I believe. So we ended up, or 4 running backs, right? No, 3 and 3. Chase Claypool, Mike Williams, Michael Pittman Jr. are our additional wide receivers. And then we also have Damian Harris, Latavius Murray, and Alexander Mattison as backups. So that's probably where we're a little light. That's probably why they graded us a little bit lower, is that we ended up with second-tier running backs on our bench. It's not exactly ideal, but I think that we have a pretty good set of starters. They don't like our starters here, but that's their opinion of things, right? Not my opinion. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this draft and for mock draft week, right?
Mock, yeah.
And make sure you catch us next week. We're going to finish up our rankings for our early rankings and then start setting things up for heading into the draft season officially. Get you ready to pull the trigger on some players during draft season. All right, guys, catch you next time. Thanks for hanging around. Bye.